know. But here we are. So, with that, Miriam, you feel okay? You be ready to share this opening, the sound of the genuine?
Yes.
Okay. So, just as a kind of a grounding here together, I wanted to share this poem by Howard Thurman. Um, and usually I like to share my screen and invite you all to read it with me because I'm a visual person. I like to see, but for now, actually, I'm just going to read it to you. And feel free to just, I always use the language, kind of take your seat and find your body, your breath. Feel free to close your eyes if you want. This spoke to both Miriam and I. Howard Thurman seems to be with us, his presence lately. So, this is again, it's the sound of the genuine. There is in every person something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in herself. There is in you something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. Nobody like you has ever been born, and no one like you will ever be born again. You are the only one. And if you miss this sound of the genuine in you, you will be a cripple all of the rest of your life because you will never be able to get a scent on who you are. Do you remember in the book, the Christian Bible, Jesus and his disciples were going through the hills, and there appeared in the turn of the road a man who was possessed of devils, as they thought. In the full moon, when the great tidal waves of energy swept through his organism, and he became as 10 men screaming through the hills like an animal in pain, and then he met Jesus on the road. And Jesus asked him one question: Who are you? What's your name? And for a moment, his tilted mind righted itself, and he said, That's it. I don't know. There are legions of me, and they riot in my streets. If I only knew, then I would be whole. So, the burden of what I have to say to you is: what is your name? Who are you? And can you find a way to hear the sound of the genuine in yourself? There are so many noises going on inside of you, so many echoes of all sorts, so many internalizing of the rumble and the traffic, the confusions, the disorders by which your environment is peopled, that I wonder if you can get still enough, not quiet enough, still enough to hear rumbling up from your unique and essential idiom, the sound of the genuine in you. I don't know if you can, but this is your assignment. So let's just stay here for just a moment and let that soak in. I don't know if you can, but this is your assignment. Just take a couple of breaths here and let that just soak into your bones, into the marrow of who you are, into your soul. Maybe just listen to a little bit of the rumbling within you. Let's just breathe here together, knowing we're holding one another in this question. Let's take one more breath. Take it in. Deepest one you've done all day. Let it out. All right. So So we just want to open up a little bit of space here. Just what came up for you? And, as we do this, just calling our attention to this is story sharing. Every moment we're together, is a moment for us to practice this. And so just kind of doing that in this form, like share a little bit about just what came up for you.
That was a perfect reading for me tonight because I just feel as if I'm filled with screaming demons today. I've got so many things that I'm trying to get done, and I keep getting interrupted in the things that I thought I was going to get done because of other things that come up. Like there's been another fever of horrible bills in the state legislature this week, and I dropped everything and submitted testimony on a bill that would have made it will make it harder for people to use their Medicaid and SNAP benefits and to keep them, and require more paperwork and burden the county caseworkers more. And it seems to be like these voting bills that are trying to make it harder for people to vote. And it's just like the state legislature is kicking people in the head when they're already on the ground writhing, trying to look for jobs, try to stay on unemployment if they haven't got a job yet, tutor their children, sign up for a COVID vaccine, or wait until their age group is eligible. And it's just like, it just seems so cruel. And I just feel that I don't know what the authentic me is, because I'm so focused on these external threats that are just kind of flying through the air. But this, the notion of meeting the man tormented by demons, that just really resonates with me, that Thurman would be writing about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel today. And the person sponsoring the bill, there was opponent testimony yesterday, and he got yelled at by the committee chairman, apparently. So he's made this insincere request to hear from people on how the bill could be improved. And so that required like another email, and, trying to make more time for more input with this person who doesn't really want to hear from us, I don't think. So where is the authenticity? I'm not seeing a lot of authenticity in my state right now.
Thank you, Ariel.
I think what comes up for me with this piece and this question is a lot of affirmation of some practices that I've taken on recently, or let's say adaptation of some practices due to my physical limitations, but also a way of life that I chose for myself and the girls, of slowing down and not rushing and doing things on our terms. So hearing you read that, and the reading that I've been doing by Howard Thurman, and watching the documentary about him, I have felt very, very affirmed and at peace with those choices to every day go outside, find a spot in nature where I could sit and listen to the birds, and just listen to the sound of the leaves, and look at the bare trees. What can I learn from those branches that are more geometric than they are lush in this state? What does that mean to me? What does that say to me? What can I learn from that? I'm thankful that I listen to the spirit, living in a society and doing all kinds of things that really would have me spending more time on those things, but I can't spend time on those things unless I spend time out in the woods. I can't be the person I feel that God wants me to be unless I have that time in nature to really hear my own voice. It's just hard to do it when I'm here at my house or in my office or in a building for that matter, just in a building. It's just not as loud for me. So I just feel kind of heard and seen.
Thank you, Miriam.
The term genuine, it's what strikes me is, who was I when God actually thought of me before the creation of the world? So before any trauma, before any abuse, before any abandonment, before any wounds, who was I actually designed to be? And you know how a plant, you kind of have to turn your plants depending on which way your windows are, right? Because otherwise they get kind of hunched over because they're always leaning towards the sun. and and it's like all of the stuff in our culture and in the world and in our lives, all the wounds, all the stuff that happens, that that can pull me away from original design, right? Original creation. It pulls it says too much, not enough. And I'm not talking about formation, which I believe is part of the design, but reactivity to things that are suboptimal, though cultural norms. Someone was talking to me the other day about really wanting to fill someone else's shoes. And I think being genuine, the genuine us, is filling our own shoes. It's hearing spirit and recognizing the unique gift that each one of us is. No matter what culture or someone else says.
Thank you, Michelle. Welcome, Kathy. Welcome, Kathy. We're sharing a little bit around a poem that we read together, The Sound of the Genuine by Howard Thurman. Not Thurming, Thurman. Yes. What else? What else came up in the sharing of that?
For me, just how sometimes the sound of the genuine doesn't have words that go along with it, that it's feelings of being drawn to or pushed away.
Will you say more about that?
You know, the trying to find your space and your lane, and what is it that you who are you really, and what is the real message that you know, sometimes it's not something that you can necessarily articulate, I think. And that, you know, it's like I have a hard time labeling people beyond when I'm around somebody, I feel warm towards them and drawn to them, or I feel cold or prickly around them and pushed away from them.
Mm.
And I'll hear other folks say, oh, that person's a taker. And it's like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. That I just knew that I felt like they were prickly. And so that's the sound of the genuine doesn't always have a word that goes to it that you can categorize and put in place and make it fit.
Mm. Yes. Yes. That's one of the things I appreciated about it, is that he this line about, because you will never be able to get a scent on who you are. And then just the idea of that sometimes I think language itself, because it's dualistic in nature, it splits us from just, so he like invites us into a whole new way of knowing who we are, and into relationship. Like, it's really not about the labels or the words, and it's about a much deeper thing, like the sound and the smell. And yeah, and I like how you're kind of saying the energy piece too, like the feeling, what that is. Well, we wanted to share that as a way to begin tonight, because in a lot of ways it kind of gets to our intention here with story sharing, of what it is we're trying to do. And it also leads nicely into the theme tonight. And so we'll go here in a little bit to the scripture, which will continue to be our practice in these sessions, ground us in that, and then have some time for us to be in the question that we offered up. But before we do, just a little bit here about the purpose and the intention again. Always important to come back to the why, which is why we had you in that, and a little bit in the pairs in the beginning. The story sharing campaign is so much larger than just a story sharing campaign. Stories are at the core of everything in our life. We're always trying to locate ourselves in the larger story. As my dog knocks on the door. Stories are how we understand ourselves. They are what compel us in action. They're what drive our decisions. Stories are central in the work of healing. To be in our stories with one another, not only the telling of our stories is therapeutic and healing in and of itself. To be witnessed is healing. It's the whole listening ourselves into wholeness, which also was spoken to here. Like, what was the line? If only I would know that I would be whole. And sometimes we don't even know what all those different pieces are until we're truly listened to. So some of it is that it's on a personal level, but also we're in the work of, letting go of some stories of death. I mean, talk about in Lent, the time of the crucifixion, these stories of our church and who we are as people of faith that need to die, and living into the new stories of who we are. And not only the new stories, but then also the new ways of being that will continue to grow those stories. And we have to do that work together. And so just kind of lifting that up again. I'll tell a quick story myself around this, because this was a gift today. Nicole and I met earlier today with Katie Bachmeyer, who is working with us around the story sharing work. And after our conversation, Nicole, this happened, and so I just felt like, okay, this is a gift from God, so I'm going to share it with y'all. It's around the importance of stories and how they work. So my brother. Oh, sorry, there's like some emotion just as I started that. My younger brother, Hunter, he recently decided to get another dog. He was going to get a rescue dog. And Hunter feels very alone in his life. And I won't go into that, but he's recently been unemployed, and he had a dog, and he decided he was going to get another dog. And he made this decision, went to the rescue a couple of nights ago and got this dog and brought it home. And the dog started acting out. and he was having a hard time and introducing the dogs together, and he decides it's not going to work out, and he takes the dog back home, or not back home, back to the rescue. And he called me today to share this with me. And as he was telling me the story, what he kept saying was, Amy, I was all alone. So I didn't have anyone else to talk about this with. I just was all alone, and I got angry, and so I just took the dog back. The dog's name is Sissy, by the way. She was a very cute little pit bull mix. And as he was telling me the story, he could hear himself telling his sister, who he was calling today, because he now regrets the decision and he was feeling guilty. And he was like wondering, should he go back and get Sissy and give her another try? So in the telling of me the story, he realizes that underneath his action and everything was this story that he was holding on to about himself, that he's alone in the world and he has no one. He was like, I didn't have a partner, I didn't have a colleague, I didn't have anyone else to talk to, and I didn't know what to do, so I just took her back. And it just struck me, because what ended up happening was he realized, oh, and here I am calling you. And so actually that story that I'm telling myself is not true. And it's not fair for me to keep playing out that same story, because what I'm doing is I'm reinforcing that story. I'm creating that story by me holding on to it. And it was this moment of like, this is why it matters to tell our story. Because when we do, we can start to see, oh, there are pieces of this that are no longer true. There is truth, yes, but there's more to the story. And so this is what we're doing together. We are shedding pieces of ourselves that we need to shed. And we're creating these new stories of ourselves, and beautiful story of resurrection. So anything else, Miriam, that you want to add to that? Wait, you're on mute.
I got so caught up in what you were saying, and just, the idea that there's the story itself, and then there's the practice of telling the story. Story sharing is a practice as much as it is the capturing of the story. So I don't think it's any accident that this is the way in which we relate best to, with and to each other, is to not only tell our stories, but be witnesses to each other's stories, to listen deeply, to understand and receive versus responding. That's the gift of story sharing. That is much as a gift to the teller as it is to the listener.
Anything else, you all, before we go to scripture, about our why and what it is we're doing here?
Just the way that you guys summed that up, it feels like it's confession and absolution, but with each other instead of going to a priest.
Very true, and thank you for saying that, because God is the one with whom that you have that transaction, and that's why this is a transactionless exchange. God takes care of all of the rest. Pardon me, Michelle.
Yeah, the thing, there's this core longing for all of us to be known, to be seen, to be heard, and just the neurophysiology of when you tell your story and someone hears it and you feel known, that changes the structure of your brain. And that in and of itself is healing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you think about the science of it, like literally, it's like down to the cells. All right, we're going to take a look at scripture. I love that we are doing this. And as you said, as our Lenten practice and our discipline, I just think it's, for me, it's honestly inviting a whole new way of, like, a whole new relationship with Lent. And this is what's happening for me with the work that we're doing together, you all with Becoming Beloved Community, is I'm literally reforming my faith. How beautiful. Okay. So will somebody volunteer to read this, please? Maybe a couple, but
I'll start
thank you, Ariel.
reading from the 8th chapter of Mark. Jesus began to teach his disciples that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all of this quite openly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things."
He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels."
Sorry, I just realized that I was on mute. Um, Miriam, do you want to say anything about the question and how we landed there?
Yes. And I'm of course have it's where the question is behind all of these uh, different screens. Um, have you posted it in the chat? Okay, no, not yet.
You got it.
Well, because I can only remember half of it, to be quite
Oh,
honest
here,
with
I'll
you.
put it. It's
Okay, thank you.
it's share a story of our time, of a time you've either told the truth and lost something or feared the truth and denied it.
Yes. I can only think about the fearing the truth and denying it part, because when we were thinking about this question and Amy reminded me of what the question was, my immediate thought went to what happens when we don't do what Howard Thurman encourages us to do. What happens when we don't ask ourselves that question and are not or are unwilling to answer it. So for me, I have lived most of my life, that I think since I could consciously think about these kinds of things, fearing my truth, the truth of who I am, of who I believe God wants me to be, because I was afraid of what it meant. And I was afraid it would be difficult. I was afraid that people wouldn't like it. I was afraid that I wouldn't live up to other people's expectations, and not understanding that there's really only one person's expectations to whom I need to live. So I grapple with that question regularly, because I feel as though in fearing the truth about myself and denying it, I'm not being my best self and my true self, and I'm squandering something precious. So that's the kind of story that I tell about myself in relation to that question. And so we want to ask that side of it, but also, what is a time where you told the truth and you lost something, whatever that thing is? I'm interested in hearing all of those kinds of things from you as you give yourself the gift of that type of deep questioning that Howard Thurman asks us to do.
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to get into two groups. We'll get into two smaller groups. It'll give us a little bit more time with one another. And then we'll come back and we'll share out a little bit of just what struck us from the process. And so I think we're going to be, Miriam, we'll be in groups of 4, each of us. And let's do 20 minutes for this. That sound good, Miriam?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. We will be back here in 20 minutes. And Kathy, Lisa, and Nicole, I'll be right with you all in just a minute. Y'all want to keep going, Ariel?
Yes.
Well,
I
we were,
know,
yes.
so juicy.
I want the miracle of the loaves and fishes, but with minutes instead of food.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh,
Yes. All right. So share what came up. Let's do a little bit of that before we close tonight.
So, the thing that I notice as I listen to my partner's stories is the many connections, right? I mean, it's mirror neurons. It's, oh, you know, we connect here and we connect here and we connect here. I hear this part of your story and how much more we are alike than we are different. And that's the gift of stories, right?
I'm just going to say this quickly. There's a book, and I don't know, you all have probably already read it, but it's called The StorySharing Animal, How Our Stories Make Us Human.
no, I haven't heard that.
Oh, it's a really good book, actually. Reminds me of, that's the only reason I said it.
I appreciated in our session opportunities to sit together in silence after deep listening, to feel those connections, to listen to them resonate, listen to where the spirit might be guiding us. But silence, it was a true gift for me.
The thing that I think I heard was that the cost of not telling the truth is more expensive than what you lose when you do tell the truth. Because when you pretend to be happy about something or be part of something or happy about being part of something that you're not, or not have integrity at a certain time, that cost is very dear. My husband's on a Zoom call playing Dungeons and Dragons with his friends, and I can hear his laugh so loud, so joyful right now.
It's amazing. Well, I'll share a gift for me. I just, I shared a story that I didn't come planning to share. And it's a story I shared very rarely. But it felt like, yeah, it just needed to be told tonight. And I just appreciate when I finished, Nicole asked for a bell. I was ringing a bell for everyone. And I didn't think to ring it for myself. And Nicole invited a bell. And I just thank you. It's like helped me, I think, honor, this story that I was ready to like let go of and also be in. And so thank you, Nicole. And thank you for my group for holding that story with me. All right, maybe we're coming to an end here at 8:28. Partner in crime, I'm looking at you. You got something to share here at the end?
I'm like, wait, how did it get to 8:28? It was 8:15 the last time I looked. I don't know anything about anybody's 8:28. So so I'm gonna be completely honest. No, I have no. My brain is somewhat empty, which is another gift in that I was able to, similar to you, I told a story that I didn't intend to tell, but it turns out that story answered the question, so I shared it. And so I'm feeling that feeling of when you empty something or when you release something. That is another gift of story sharing, is that no one expects anything from me. And so I can just let it go and it's gone. So I'm feeling a bit void right now,
Yeah.
which is not the best to come to the close with, but it's what I'm
It's a
coming with.
gift. It's a gift. So, well, I'll tell you what, I have something that's coming to me, and it's a
Good.
build on the sound of the genuine, and I feel like it's just a theme that's coming up tonight. So let me pull it. An invitation just to give you all a sense of where we're going next week. Is we'll be back, and we'll be sharing around zeal. Zeal as in Zeal. Nicole and I were laughing. It's not a word we often play with, but that's going to be our focus next week. So what I'll offer up here is another poem, and it's Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough in a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left your voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could, determined to save the only life you could save. I will stick that in the chat, friends. And with that, good night.
Good night.
Peace be with you all.
Peace. Good night.
Peace.
Everyone.
So I got to say, I'm seeing some of you more than I'm seeing my husband.
I know.
You know,
Yes.
Tuesday morning, Tuesday night, Thursday, Friday. I mean, just saying.
No, see, this is what happens. We're taking over. We're taking over the world. We're coming together. I don't know. There's a movement happening, y'all. Watch out.
It wouldn't be the same if they came, believe me. I'm not sure what we do about that statement.
But I mean, you know, it's kind of funny. It's
Yeah.
well, my husband was going to be here tonight, actually, but
okay.
then somebody ran into the back of his truck when he was delivering